Well, South Africa and Kenya have reaffirmed their continued support for Palestine, which has been in a long-standing conflict with Israel. South Africa was among the first countries in the region to condemn the decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. That was an announcement, you'll recall, made by the Americans during the Trump era. Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa, speaking today while he was hosting Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta, also expressed concern over the escalating territorial dispute in Western Sahara.
We stand together with the rest of the international community in support of the people of Palestine and Western Sahara in their struggle for self-determination and nationhood. We note the recent Security Council resolution to extend the mandate of the United Nations mission for the referendum in Western Sahara until the 31st of October 2022. South Africa agrees with Kenya that it is important for the Security Council to support the work of the UN mission and the reconvening of negotiations by the Secretary General of the United Nations Personal Envoy.
Well, Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta has called for a visa-free travel system with South Africa. Kenyatta says this will boost and strengthen economic relations between the two countries.
Your Excellency, our common prosperity goals at bilateral and multilateral levels, as envisioned in our Africa Agenda 2063 and the Africa Free Trade Area, will largely remain unrealized if the free movement of people and merchandise is not encouraged. So with this in mind, I would indeed appreciate the progress made so far towards the realization of reciprocal visa-free travel regimes between our two countries be looked at, for this will certainly act as a catalyst to boosting trade and investment between our two brotherly countries for the mutual benefit of our people.
Let's talk more about Kenya-South Africa relations. Bring in advocate Sipho Mantula. He's a researcher with the Thabo Mbeki School of Public and International Affairs. Advocate, always good to speak to you. Welcome to Newsfeed PM. First things first, how significant is the South Africa-Kenya relationship in the context of Africa and broader international relations?
Afternoon and Jumbo Africa to the viewers. I think if you look at the context and the content of this relationship, it will date back to what President Ramaphosa spoke about, the Pan-African solidarity that they've waged with Kenya in the 1960s. Despite that, the apartheid South Africa have diplomatic relations with Kenya in 1992. It was only after 1994 when South Africa was now beginning to can open wide to many African countries, particularly in the east of the African continent. So our relation with Kenya are very critical at this juncture where both of us were hit by COVID-19. If you look at Kenya, it has been leading in East Africa in terms of change, development, economy, issues of tourism, issues of arts and culture, issues as well as of military. So that's where one can look at that. Diplomatically, there is a relation, but culturally, I think that we are still missing that linkage that we should connect, as we will always say. The AU talks about people-to-people contact.
And that connection that you say is still lacking. Why is it lacking?
Look, like today, when they were speaking about the issues of visa, the free visa that we have already alluded to, you will recall that when the minister Pando went to Kenya in August, they did emphasize on it about relaxing the borders of both countries. The lacking thereof can be done by the political will. Like even Mbeki, they were talking about the inter-Africa trade, the EU, the AU peace and security issues, but I think they've missed the point of this African Renaissance philosophy of uniting the youth of the continent. Remember that Uhuru Kenyatta is facing elections come 2022. So this visit might be the last or might be the other visit that he will come in the country. So it is critical when we look at the young people, people-to-people relation, and even engagement on issues that affect Africa. More so, Kenya was part of the UN Security Council for the month of October.
You talk about security. That also came up, peace and security, as one of the themes during today's media brief by the two heads of state. Obviously, the main concerns currently are the conflicts in Sudan, Ethiopia and Tigray, as well as the situation closer to our border here in South Africa in Mozambique. Kenya has had its fair share of battles and security concerns. How much room is there for a South Africa-Kenyan collaboration that could actually bring about change, or is it all, at this point, confined to the framework of the AU?
One will say that I think today it has been raised that both countries will look at their strength, at their strategic vintage points on issues of conflict, peace and security, because you cannot talk of inter-Africa trade, you cannot talk of development when you cannot resolve conflicts that are in the Horn of Africa, like you are talking about Tigray, Sudan, and Mozambique, Eswatini. Kenya had the role because it sits at the UN body. South Africa has been supporting the SADC peacekeeping missions in the broader African continent. Hence, the question of Western Sahara came out. The issues as well of how to work around development and the peace missions in Africa. And for me, Mbeki, I still say we are not using the soft power of culture, diplomacy, of putting cultural thinking and our indigenous ways of resolving conflicts. Look at why we are still having a challenge in the Horn of Africa, in the capital city of the AU, Addis Ababa. And Uhuru Kenyatta had an opportunity to go to the US. He met with Blinken just recently. So meeting with President Ramaphosa, we can talk about COVID-19, but peace and security issues are at the center of this bilateral engagement.
Is the lack of the use, as it were, of that soft power largely due to the fact that in Africa, often when issues are addressed, even when heads of state in warring countries are at fault, it appears as though African heads of state don't want to offend each other?
Correctly, there is that tendency of being lenient to one another. If you looked at how the situation in Sudan took almost a month, and when you look back, when you look at African president protecting one another, this is the challenge that we are seeing, that the soft power is to use the young people, is to use the power of culture the way I have alluded. They might have engaged on tourism issues, but it is important that we do understand our cultural histories and knowledges, and at the same time avoid to can defend the things that are very bad. Like you know that Uhuru Kenyatta has been implicated, complicated in the Pandora Papers, and now he comes in and he's quite not talking about corruption in the broader continent with COVID-19 scandal, or what we call COVID gate, that has ravaged most of the African countries about responsibility and COVID actually unmasking our health system in most of the African countries. Even if he'll be going to Eastern Cape tomorrow, he needs to be aware that Africa needs to have a patent rights of all vaccines that are coming with epidemics and pandemics.
And let's talk about money. You brought it up. The issue of the African Continental Free Trade Area, it basically took effect from January this year. The idea is that African states will be able to do business with one another with much more ease than in the past. But when you look at that sort of arrangement and the people who are in charge of countries across the continent, how do we get it to work to the benefit, the ultimate benefit of you and I, the citizens?
Again, I will